Hello, I'm Dennis McGrath. I'm the module leader for BKEY402, the context of business module. Now what I'm trying to do, what I hope to do in this fairly short video, is to give you a flavour, give you some idea of what this module is actually about. So the first thing to point out is that it is an overview. This module is not designed to give you an in-depth discipline-specific knowledge. We are not going to be giving you an introductory course in economics or in law or in ethics or corporate social responsibility and so on. What we're looking at is an overview of the business context through a series of problems. Now, of course, you will need to use bits of history, politics, economics, ethics, law, psychology and so on and so forth in trying to analyze these problems. But we will not be doing a systematic approach to a discipline-specific academic discipline. Now, students who study almost anything in WBS will take some of these things, some of these disciplines in greater depth later on in their academic career. Usually they'll start getting very discipline-specific stuff at level 5. But again, please understand that we're not going to teach you introductory economics or introductory law or introductory psychology and so on in this particular module. So now we move on to talking about how we're going to do this. We use a technique known as problem-based learning, which indeed has been around for a long time. Now, the significant part of this technique it's a very student-based approach. Students drive the learning process here, or to be more precise, groups of students drive the learning process. So, groups of students learn about complex problems. That's how they learn. That's how we intend that you learn about the business context, by investigating complex and multifaceted, and as it says, fairly realistic problems. I indicate that they're realistic problems because there is still a degree of artificiality in the way we construct our problems. There has to be. So you will work in groups of 4 or 5 in a class, and indeed online. Now what you do in your groups of 4 or 5 is, first of all, you decide what you already know about the problem. For example, the first problem is connected with competition between the big supermarket chains in the United Kingdom. And so the groups get together and work out, probably in their first class, what they already know about competition, about supermarkets. Maybe that might not be very much. Then they go on from there to decide what they need to know, what they have to find out, where are the gaps in their knowledge and so on. Then from there, work out how to do the research to find out the new information. And of course, with a group of 4 or 5, the sensible thing to do is divide up these tasks between different members of the group. Now, of course, you may well ask, well, where's the staff? What are they doing here? Now, the role of our tutors, and in each class we have 2 tutors, is to facilitate this process, to give you a scaffolding, to help you and to guide you doing this stuff. The tutor won't be spending the tutors indeed, as there's 2 of them, will not be spending all the time standing in front of class directing you what to do. We will in our classes be using some time to do whole class activities. How and when these occur depend on the class interaction. Now if we look at our sources of learning, and then we go on to look at participation. Participation is perhaps a strange thing that doesn't appear in other modules. Our sources of learning are 2. These 2 are equally important. You have to engage in learning both in the classroom and online. Unlike a lot of modules, and perhaps the way you've used online materials in your previous education, the online facilities here aren't optional. They're not just designed to help you. You have to use the online facilities in order to gain knowledge in this module, in order indeed to pass this module. Now if we go back to look at the classroom, as I said, we've got 2 tutors. Each classroom has got 50 students, and these 50 students are divided into up to 10 study groups. I might point out that in practice most of our classes will have less than 50 students, but the maximum is 50 students and the maximum is 10 study groups. Now our class time is used very intensively. Our design is to allow 60 minutes of group work in a class and 20 to 25 minutes of whole class activity. The whole class activity is led by the tutors. That may well be almost equivalent of a mini lecture, a small lecture. It may be a question and answer session. It really depends on how the class is going. So the whole thing is designed to be interactive, and different classes may indeed use the whole class activity quite differently. So that's the classroom aspect of this module. The online aspect is indeed equally important. Our online provision in this university is run through Blackboard. So for this module we have two Blackboard sites. The main Blackboard site, the site you're used to using, the equivalent of the site you're used to using for most of the modules, is in fact what we describe as our information site. This is where we provide a great deal of information, all the problems, including, by the way, a copy of the module handbook. It includes background information, introductory materials, and of course it includes the specification for the problems as well. So the information site includes information. Students need to go to that quite often to read stuff. The other site, which is the class workshop site, is where students actually do work. Groups of students are required to use this site in order to do their research, to indicate their learning, to show their analysis and so on. So it is a requirement of the module that groups and individual students use the workshop. On the workshop there are learning modules which again give you more detail about the background. There's self-test questions which help you and give you feedback as you're working through the problem. There's also two other things here. There's a group blog. Now the group blog is an essential and very important aspect here. We expect, indeed we require, groups of students to use the group blog to analyse the problems and to pass information to one another and so on. The other aspect of the online thing is that there are two online tests which you have to do starting in week 3. And they are individual tests, they're time tests. You only get one chance to do it. This, of course, is completely unlike the learning and the self-test questions, which you can do as many times as you like. The online tests count as your marks. Your activity, your contribution in the blog also counts to your marks in a rather complicated way, which I'll now go on to explain. Now, participation in this module is a very, very important aspect. If you do not participate in the module, you will fail the module, you cannot pass. So if you score less than 50, you cannot pass. We grade participation each week. One member of the staff, which is the learning and assessment manager, one member of the staff in each class, one of the two class tutors, acts as a learning and assessment manager. The learning and assessment manager looks at both online work and classroom work every week and gauges whether students have good participation. That is to say, they're engaging with their fellow members, they're using the blog, they're researching some parts of the problem and so on. Good participation gets you up to 20 marks per week. Adequate participation, as the name adequate suggests, means you're doing some work but perhaps not really excellent work, and that gives you up to 10 marks. Inadequate participation means that in our judgment you're not participating in class, you're sitting there with your group perhaps doing nothing, you're not contributing online, there's no information from you in the group blog and so on. For that you get 0 marks. Now participation is the key to passing this module. Participation doesn't actually give you the percentage mark at the end of the module, but it does determine whether you pass the module or not. And this is incredibly important. If you do not engage with your fellow members, if you do not contribute, you will not get adequate participation. Your participation marks will be less than 50 for a problem, and that means you will fail the problem. And of course, if you do this, you'll tend to fail the whole course. So it's like, very, very important that everybody understand this. Participation is the key to passing this module. So participation basically is the entry key. If you pass the module or fail the module depends on your participation. How well you pass the module depends on your marks in the online test and your marks in group presentations or group reports. But the key to passing is participation. Now, how do we judge participation? Well, we gauge participation by having a specific academic role here for one of the class tutors. One of the class tutors is your designated Learning and Assessment Manager. The Learning and Assessment Manager judges both your work online and in the classroom. And I stress here, the LAM, the Learning and Assessment Manager, an unfortunate name in my opinion, but never mind. The LAM judges individuals and groups' work both online during the week and in the classroom. It is not just classroom assessment, it is online assessment. The Learning Assessment Manager monitors online activity and makes a judgment on whether individual students have good, adequate or inadequate participation depending on their behaviour, their engagement, their contribution both in classroom and online. So to emphasise that, the Learning Assessment Manager monitors online activity. Specifically and very importantly, the Learning Assessment Manager will look up blog entries for each member of group each week. They will check whether each member of the group has worked through the lesson material in the class workshop. We'll check whether they have done the tests and so on. If students are not doing that, they will get very, very poor participation rates. The same applies to classroom activity. Students who don't attend, presumably, which they can't participate, but who do not participate, who do not help out in the group work, who don't engage in the group work in classroom, again, will get very poor participation. This is a very important thing to understand here, because a lot of what we do seems to be very, very straightforward group work. Some students take the view that, well, we let the other members of the group do all the work and we'll do nothing and still get the marks. That is not going to happen here. It absolutely cannot happen because of the participation requirement. The Learning Assessment Manager will very easily be able to determine whether a student is participating, whether they're contributing or not. So free riders, people who think they can let the other members of the group do most of the work and scrape by just doing a few online tests, they will fail. You cannot, and I cannot stress this enough, you cannot pass this module by taking the approach that you'll do the minimum amount of work and just appear to do some tests. That will not work in this module. Now, there's lots more information available on the module, and I suggest you download the student handbook, which looks like this. There's a link actually directed off to this video on the main site, and download that. Now, there is lots of other information about the module. I mean, there's lots of other detail to be filled in. That detail will be filled in by your class tutors at your first class meeting. Things will become a lot clearer. I deliberately in this video just emphasize the very fundamental differences from this module and most modules, and the overwhelming importance of participation. So, good luck with the module, and I may see you